And in just a moment, Matt is going to share a video from the movie This Is 40 as we continue our series on the eye of the storm. So we just got all mellow and now we're going to talk about conflict. But I figured now that you're centered. And the other rows, well, there's many, just hearing you sing, Gwen. Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you. You're a beautiful rose and your voice. So here we are. See if you can relate. So how many of you think that Debbie and Pete were employing what the therapist taught them? They were really trying. And can you relate? Come on, be honest. Can you relate ever at some point in your life? Right? So Pete and Debbie are struggling, right, to use those techniques that they learn in couples therapy, because we can see, okay, they attempt to share a feeling, but then they resort to trying to be right, to prove a point, making judgments, blaming, justifying their actions based on what the other person is doing or not doing. And then we see the good old competing to prove your point, right? To be heard and to have their needs met, right? And so not only is it difficult to employ or to utilize techniques that we learn from nonviolent communication, from therapy, psychology, but it is also difficult or next to impossible to live our spiritual teachings that call us, as the master teacher Jesus said, to love our neighbor, right? We talk about love being one of our spiritual powers, and it doesn't mean that I like everything that happens, but that I will unify and harmonize my words, my actions to be the highest that I can be, right? But when we are in that triggered kind of mode from within, and when we are reactive, why it is impossible to behold the light, the Christ, the God essence in you is because we are centered somewhere else. See, when we are triggered and reactive, it is a telltale sign that we are centered in the consciousness of our false self, our personality, our ego, all ways to say the same thing. And when we are centered there in consciousness, we are consciously and unconsciously living from our hurts, the self-limiting stories that we have taken on. And sometimes they're just playing the old, it's like a country song playing in the background, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, well, you hurt me again, whatever it may be is playing. And it is a sign that we are living, as Gary Simmons, author of The Eye of the Storm, capital I, for centered, I am, that we are living from our woundedness rather than our wholeness. And wholeness is our divine essence, our divinity, our Christ self, our God self, so on and so on. And when we are living from our woundedness, then we find ourselves kind of in a battlefield within relationship when some challenging things occur. And then, like Pete and Debbie from the movie, we find ourselves competing to get our needs met, to prove that point, to be heard, and so on and so on. And competition, right, is one of the four winds of what? Conflict, right? We've been talking about, we can know that When we are experiencing the winds of conflict, it is a telltale sign we are in our woundedness rather than in our wholeness. And so we have explored separation and the antidote, which is the aspect of wholeness. These are all aspects of wholeness, is communion. So when I believe that someone is my enemy, that someone is causing my pain, I'm not saying that people are always showing up in their wholeness, but the bottom line, if I am triggered by something, it is a sign that something in me needs healing because I am buying into an old story. And the person before me is mirroring. It may not be mirroring what I do, but it's showing me because of my reaction, maybe I need some healing. Doesn't mean that I'm going to agree with the person, but how am I going to show up? And so misperception, when the old stories are subconsciously playing, we can make assumptions about why people looked at us a certain way, did say something, didn't say something, so on and so on, and we can see the misperceptions that are here. Or, if you got that old story, right? This is a family one that's been passed on for generations and generations in my family, that I am a burden, right? And now my mother's there, and I see that she has that same, and it's no accident, and I'm like, oh, that's why, like, sometimes, when somebody, is on the computer for so long, I can make it a story about them not loving me or that I'm a burden. No, that's my old story playing, right, when that comes up. And then I can also see it in one of my own children. And so, like, the cool thing is I get to talk to, my son about it, and I can maybe do other things with my mom, who maybe is not as open. I love her to death, but different generation, open to different things, and it's all okay. But now when I get to see that, oh my God, that clouds my perceptions sometimes of things, because I will look for, that where I'm being called to my wholeness, right? So now here, today we're focusing on when we're in that competition. I want to talk about purpose. Purpose, we hear that. What's my purpose in life? Anybody ever thought that, believed that, questioned that over and over, right? So I want to look at how we can define purpose in just a moment. It is dependent upon where we are centered and focusing our consciousness. So co-founder of Unity, Charles Fillmore, said we have pivotal consciousness. Pivot, right? We are in this world, but not of this world, but we got to navigate, right? Spiritual truths are quite different than what the world tells us we should do and what we should be. So pivotal means when I am focused here on all the rules of the world, third dimensional worldly beliefs, right? I can define purpose one way. And when I'm focused inward, where, yes, the spiritual teachings remind me, but it reminds me of a truth that I hold in my soul, in the depths of my being and knowing, right? So that, where are we? We need to live in this world and exist, but we need to allow our divine soul to define, to be the essence that guides us. So let us take that, a look of how we define our purpose when we are focused in what the world defines as our purpose, and then what the spiritual teachings and our soul calls us the meaning of our purpose. So in worldly terms, our purpose is to be successful, to be the best. And we know that we're successful in living on purpose, and we are the best when we get good grades. It starts out in school, when we are achieving, right? We're winning awards. Not that there's anything wrong with any of those. Then it follows, we get a good paying job, a job with a title, material abundance, good salary, high paying salary, the house, the car, and even metrics, right? The amount proves our worth. Sometimes we have, since we've been open, and even before, as we are living in changing times, and we're living in these hybrid times, sometimes I don't want to make assumptions, but people will be like, oh, There's only so many people here. And it's said with a little bit of a heavy heart. So does how many people, I'm not saying, does how many people here determine how are we living on purpose here in this community? Or does it determine my purpose as a minister, whether it's 50 people, 100 people, or 10, right? And so we can make a lot of meaning about something, right? And we use those metrics with other things, right? And then success when we have recognition, fame. And we're in a relationship. I found my soulmate. My partner is here to make me happy. Now, all of these things are beautiful. There's nothing wrong with them. But if we forget that, but in the midst of like losing a job and we think we're purposeless, or there's something wrong with us, or that we're broken, then we know that we have pivoted way outward and we're there in that definition of being on purpose, right? Because remember, in my abundance in all forms, and even money, I played the Powerball, 730 million, right? In my abundance, I can do wonderful things, but it is not the driver of who I am. It is an energy form in which I can share the wealth and do some wonderful things. So if I'm not here next Sunday, you know I won. No, I wouldn't do that. I would share it. Maybe we just all have a party next Sunday, but we do that anyway. But now when we look to our spiritual soul and the spiritual teachings, purpose is defined way so differently, right? Our purpose is to awaken, to realize our true self, our divine essence. And we use our gifts to bless others. It doesn't matter what career we're in. We can show up on purpose and to be the light anywhere we go. And then we have a consciousness of abundance and appreciation, right? For all that we have. And knowing that the fullness of the mysterious presence of God is everywhere present, and that right where I am and breathe, I tap into it. I can realize my oneness, and with that, I could tap into those divine ideas. That is rich abundance, right? To have that knowing in this moment, regardless of what's in my bank account, what job I have, what's going on in my family, all is well with my soul. That is abundance to me. And then instead of, needing to get the award, again, it's not like we don't recognize people, but we are here to recognize not only our sacred worth, but the sacred worth of others in all the many costumes they show up in, in all the ways. And that relationships, yes, we are to mirror our beauty with one another, and there's nothing more profound than being in that experience. But the purpose of relationships is that we are, M is missing there, spiritual messengers on assignment. Ooh. And this is what Carolyn Mace shares. Every relationship you forge has the potential to teach you about yourself and your deeply held views. In fact, there's no better laboratory for self-study than through relationships. Relationships can introduce you to the aspects of yourself that might otherwise remain hidden. And when we say remain hidden, that is the definition of shadow. It's not this lurking thing inside of us, right? That which is hidden from consciousness. And as a result, relationships can be quite painful. Learning about us and facing our own limitations are not things we tend to do with enthusiasm. We do not meet and become involved with people as a result of some random process. Each of us generates patterns of energy that attract particular people into our lives. The good, the bad, and the ugly, but it's all divine. Try to view your relationships as spiritual messengers, bringing to you revelations about your strengths and weaknesses, or your wounds and your wholeness, and providing valuable lessons on your path to consciousness. Your challenge is to form and maintain relationships that support your development and the development of others, to re-script unhealthy relationships if possible. Takes more than one to be willing to do that, and to respectfully release those that limit growth, those who are stuck to their old stories, who may be violent, whose suffering is spilling over and over, but we release them without judging. It is about honoring the lessons that the relationships can teach you and having the courage to respond clearly to their lessons. So let's hone in on that. Relationships, the purpose of relationships. Spiritual messengers bringing to each other revelations about each other's strengths and weaknesses and providing valuable lessons on our path to awakening, to consciousness. And again, strength and weaknesses, AKA, can be shadow and light, woundedness and wholeness, all aspects meaning the same thing, different language. So it's easy to embrace the messenger when they are sharing light. But before I get into that, just really want to hone in on something. That each of us is here on purpose. Say it, I am here on purpose, with purpose. I am here on purpose, with purpose. There is no soul that is birthed without sacred purpose. And each of us are spiritual messengers, again, on assignment. So, have you ever had a painful experience, lost a job, had discord in your family? Maybe some people are not talking to each other, or struggling with dis-ease, so on and so on. And in those times, fear surfaces, right? And at first, we may pivot outward to look for our answers, to get people to show up a certain way, to have this all fixed here before we might pivot inward. And so when we are in that fear of losing something or someone, or the fear that can come up with a doctor's diagnosis that may say you have 10% chance of healing, what do we do? Sometimes that fear can be so overwhelming that we feel lost. We feel alone. When we maybe retire or lose a job, we may think, oh my gosh, I have no purpose. Again, swinging outward, right? And so we are brought back inward. I can tell you that no one is without purpose. Again. And we can also hold this about our loved ones when we're watching them struggle, when they're lost, maybe when they're young, if you've had children, they don't care about school, or maybe they're partying, and then later on, maybe they're struggling with addiction or mental dis-ease. Anybody have a loved one where one of those things you've experienced with a loved one? Any one of them? Maybe all of them? When you will know that fear of sometimes wondering, they're lost? Will they ever find their way? Is it too late as they get older? Not wondering that they're on purpose, right? Because it looks so painful. And so it is so important for me to not only remind myself of this, but you, that we are here on purpose. And before I give a little bit more proof to really hook you in, I think you know that here. I know you all do. And some of you even here, but when we go through those times, I want us, once again, I gave you a long list before, but I want to be a little succinct in summarizing divine purpose just with two little things. One, to awaken to the fullness, the truth of who we are, our God essence, and that we are here as spiritual messengers, helping each other on our path to awakening, right? What is I'm not sure if it's Rumi, we're all here just walking each other home, right? But we can get so complicated when we're all out here and we have to survive and do all these things. And I'm not doubting that. So it's easy for us to embrace the messenger when they are mirroring love and light and beauty and appreciation, those feel-good things, right? We are here to mirror the light, to be the kindness and the love. But do we see them as spiritual messengers when maybe pain is being mirrored, shortcomings are being mirrored, and when you're feeling triggered and then you're wanting to believe that they're your enemy, can we see them as a messenger on divine assignment then? It's a little hard, because sometimes what we think is, we go into, what did I do wrong? Will I ever be loved? There that is again, so on and so on. Or we may think when we're feeling lost, like, I thought I was practicing and meditating every day. Like, where did I go wrong? So just want to test where you're placing your faith. I'm going to ask you some questions about what you believe spiritually. So do you believe that God is perfection and perfect law? Yes or no? That was a little weak. Let me say that again. Yeah, you're thinking. Okay. And you don't have to say yes. So maybe I'm wanting you to say yes and you don't want to. That's okay too. But I'll say it again. Do you believe that God is perfection and perfect law? Do you believe that God is the perfect source, principle, energy, and vibration of love, of wisdom, and intelligence? Absolutely. Yes. And do you ever marvel? Do you ever look up in the sky, look at the moon, the stars? Do you ever wonder, like, how is that, like, wow, like the perfection of how the earth spins on its axis, the timing of the ebb and the flow of the tide, the phases of the moon, when the leaves know when to drop their leaves, and when the flowers know when it's time to bloom. And how about the birth of a baby? And even perfection in dying and leaving this earth. Sometimes thinks it wasn't supposed to be this way, happened that way, but there is divine perfection in it all. So if you believe that God is perfect perfection, can you believe that there is perfection in us being both spiritual messengers of the light and the dark? Yes or no? Yes. Yes. Okay. So what do we do? What do we do when the messenger is mirroring some darkness, some hurts? And this is more than I can share than in this service. And it is going to be part of this focus of the quantum living that is going to be, I believe, in March that I will be teaching. So first thing is, remember, I am on divine assignment. Pivot from away what they're doing. Because if we're out here, nope. Just saying it doesn't work. I found it. Remember, I am on divine assignment. 2, just say that. I'm on divine assignment. I'm a spiritual messenger. What will my message be? And then recognize when you are triggered. And instead of blaming them, know that there is something in you that is calling for healing. Pivot away from the worldly ways we want to win, from needing to be right, assigning blame, competing, and making assumptions. Instead of asking, hey, this is what I was feeling, these are the facts. Instead of saying, you were thinking this about me. And pivot inward to discern the truth. That is the homing device, our spiritual heart, our spiritual soul. And we say, oh, I am giving an opportunity to heal. Woohoo! And some of this may not be done in that moment. You can begin to do it in that moment as you practice this, but the more you practice it, right? An opportunity to be the presence of the light. What does that mean? Kindness, patience, understanding, listening presence. I don't have to like anything that's being said, but who am I going to be? And then embody to the best of your ability the highest expression of your wholeness, right? And how do I do that? I listen from the heart instead of preparing a defense or prove something. Again, what I said, being the presence of patience, respect. You can disagree, you can say no, but who are you being when you're saying it? Understanding, wisdom, compassion. Listen for what they're feeling and what they might be needing. And then you get to ask, can I share my feelings and my needs? And this is without judgment. It's not, I feel sad because you're a jerk. I am really noticing I'm feeling sad because there's nothing more important than me to know that you are happy and that you are well, rather than you never listen, you are stubborn, so on and so on. And there's going to be times where you're going to have to agree to disagree. Maybe you're not going to see it the same way. And then maybe I have to love from a distance, meaning I hold them in prayer, but right now I might not be able to be in relationship, maybe because I need that preparedness, or it's just, maybe the lesson's over, or it's just, And then are you willing to receive the message? And you might not get that all in this moment. So when I was finding myself fearful about a loved one and their well-being, and it was a very dark time for my loved one, and I shared this with you, and it's not a secret, and he gives permission when he had a seizure, and there were some signs, and he didn't want to go to the doctor, and so out of my fear, I was sharing my frustration. What are you going to wait till this happens, and blah, 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 blah. All of that coming from my fear of something happening to him, because I love him so much, right? And I remember calling, after he was rushed to the hospital, he was in the bed, he was doing better, and I remember going downstairs and calling at the time my mentor for the field licensing program when I was going through the ordination process for Unity. And her son, not the same circumstances, but had similar experiences as my son was going through, and he committed suicide. And she said to me, if there's one thing I can just tell you, Angela, just love him. I know fear is going to come up. It came up for me. And in his passing, the gift that he gave me is to show me how to love more profoundly and not from my fear. So if there's anything I can share with you, that soul who left her son lived with a mighty purpose. We may not understand all of it, but she was getting the message from the messenger. It might not have been out picturing the way she wanted it, but there was some divine design. And now that was being passed to me. And that affected me in a profound way in how I show up. Doesn't mean I always get it right, but I can tell you that that is very much present in my heart and my soul. Receive the message, as hard as it may be. And then the gratitude for the gift of the message. I have loved ones who are close to me that are teaching me the new meaning of compassion and loving and being present and being able to tap into a way. And again, doesn't mean that I don't get it right all the time, but I know we're all living with divine purpose, and I am ready and willing to receive their gift, even in the packages I don't want or like. So that is my invitation to you. And I like to close. I did a little bit of a adaptation to the meaning of the Namaste blessing. And so if you'd feel so moved to read it with me, I invite you into that. The divine light in me bows to the light within you. I honor the place in you where the entire universe dwells. I bow to the place in you that is love, light, and joy. And when you and I bow to our true nature, we are one. My soul recognizes your soul as a spiritual messenger. I thank you for the gift of your message. Let us heal and realize we have sacred purpose and that we are on divine assignment to heal the world. Namaste.